Hey, what's up you guys, The Curious Owl here, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. This is an adult thriller novel, and Ruth Ware is one of those authors that I heard so many things about that when I had the chance, I went out and bought several of her books so that I could really get to an idea of her as a thriller author, and I was okay with this story, but there were a lot of things I was not okay with, and for this being my first Ruth Ware book, I'm still looking forward to reading her other books, but this one wasn't as good as I had hoped it would. The main plot of the story deals with a woman named Laura Blacklock, who is an English woman, and she is being offered this once-in-a-lifetime chance to go on the maiden voyage of this ship called the Aurora and write an article for this travel magazine she works for called Velocity. Unfortunately, though, right before she's supposed to get on this ship, she is robbed in the middle of the night and is attacked by the robber that is in her house. And with this comes a lot of PTSD problems that she suffers with on the boat, along with some very troublesome romantic issues with her boyfriend, who is thinking of going off to New York to extend his career, and him wanting her to go with him, but she's very afraid and basically is dealing with a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder problems. Then when she actually gets on the boat to the Aurora, things seem to be going pretty well, until she finds a body floating in the sea where the boat is going. Because Laura believes that she has seen a murder that has happened on this boat, she tries to find out who is the killer and who was the person that was murdered. But when the ship claims that everyone is on board and there is nobody missing, Laura starts to figure out that things are not as what they seem on this boat, and things are actually much darker than they look. And given the fact that she takes antidepressants and drinks alcohol a lot, it really impairs her ability to be seen as reliable to the people that are on this boat, because they know of her history and they know of her post-traumatic stress disorder due to her recent break-in in her apartment, and everyone starts to really count against her, and it's up to her to find out if this is actually happening, if this murder actually happened, and bring the person that did it to justice. Overall, I really loved the premise of the story. It was dark, it was creepy. Pretty much the entirety of the story was on a boat, which made it even more high stakes because there's no police around, there's nobody able to really bring justice to this murder that supposedly happened, and Laura is the only one who can find out really what exactly happened. However, it was incredibly slow paced throughout the entirety of the book, and it really made it hard for me to be able to sit and read through it in one sitting, because I just was dredging through the book about halfway through and I just wanted it to be over. And it didn't really get super gripping until probably the last 50 to 75 pages of the book, which I think for a thriller it has to be much, much sooner in order to get your audience to really be invested with the case itself. The thing about this book, though, is that it bounces from the story itself to emails and chat room messages, basically, that were in tandem with the story and had started basically once Laura was declared missing throughout part of the story, as for a good part of the novel, nobody's able to hear from her outside of the boat. The story was also broken up into multiple parts, which I felt was completely unnecessary, as I feel like it just bogged down the story a lot and made the story feel much more episodic than it needed to. I feel like it just made it harder to get through the rest of the book because I was just dredging through it and wanting to get to the next part just to be able to be done with it for a time or two. The thing that you have to know going into this story is that Laura is automatically essentially considered an unreliable narrator because of her PTSD and the fact that at the time she sees the supposed murder, she has taken antidepressants and drinks alcohol a lot, so you really have no idea whether or not this has actually happened, and you're going with Laura as she tries to find out whether or not this murder did happen, and if it did happen, who did it, and who was killed, and why. I feel like the questioning aspect of whether or not she was reliable or not just took way too long, because I felt like through part of the novel you understood that she wasn't lying, but it kept making the idea that she was lying, and I really, really didn't like that. I feel like it was dragged on too long, and I feel like there was several points where the story could have been like, okay, I think Laura's actually right. There's something that strange is going on here and needs to be dealt with. What I will say, though, that was really awesome was that there were a lot of really great twists and turns that were developed throughout the story. I feel like that the story itself, the premise of it was really good, and the overall structure of it was really good, but some of the finer details were just really, really mushy, and I feel like there was just way too much going on. I don't like the way that the book was split up, and I just feel like there were so many suspects involved with the story. Like, there were so many people on this boat that it was hard to keep track of them, and it made it harder to really understand, you know, who exactly was involved with this murder, if they were, and whether or not, you know, they had motive. It was just really hard to kind of keep everyone in check. It was kind of like Clue for me, where I just didn't know who exactly was who and whether or not they actually did it, because I didn't understand their motives and all this kind of stuff. And it was just really hard to get involved with the story. I think the best phrase to describe it was that there were too many cooks in the kitchen to actually cook the meal. The ending also was incredibly quick, which I was really surprised by, because it almost had like a 20-page denouement from the climax of the story, and I just felt that it was a little rushed in my opinion. I feel like the climax could have come at a much earlier point. It almost felt like that there was something that was supposed to happen that was supposed to be unexpected, but everything was just super muddy, and I didn't quite understand what was going on about the last part of the story. Overall, I ended up giving The Woman in Cabin 10 3 out of 5 stars. I mean, it wasn't absolutely awful by any means, but I feel like that there were some things that I just would have done differently. I think the overall premise was good, and some of the plot twists were really good, and I did like Laura as a main character for the most part, but I feel like there were just so many problems with it that I would have changed a lot of things very drastically to make this a little bit more of an impactful thriller and incorporate a lot more of the mystery aspect within it. So thank you guys so much for joining me in this video of The Woman in Cabin 10. If you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up, and if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit the button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!